Welcome to Tournament Update. I'm Neal Campbell and I have with me my colleague Nick Wake. We have a full agenda tonight to go through. First, we want to talk a little bit about updated prizes. Nick, you know this coronavirus has really taken over the world.
Totally crazy.
And we've seen a lot of crazy behaviors, and one of the things we thought we could do to help the fans out there is to update a couple of our prizes. So we've decided to award both a 4th and a 5th place prize.
It's a great thing to do, Neal.
The 4th place prize is going to be a 6-pack of toilet paper, and the 5th place prize is going to be a loaf of bread. It is rye bread, but it's bread nonetheless, and we think all the fans are going to love it. We're then going to go into the West Regional bracket breakdown. Nick and I are going to give you some of our ideas and thoughts on what we see coming in tonight's games. And then we're going to do an East Regional post-game update and kind of talk about what we saw on the court and why we think we saw it. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on tonight's matchups.
Illinois and Dayton, right out of the gates, you got a great matchup. I mentioned this in the pregame yesterday. You got Winston with some fresh legs here. First game of the night. Again, tend to leaning towards that left basket in some of the early season games, but you know, last night totally debunked it. That West Side or the West Regional, or I'm sorry, East Regional really had a mix of different right and left there. So it'll be interesting to see which way Winston goes with this one.
And we got a lot of fans out there. I know his sister Annie's going to be willing Winston to pick the Illini in tonight's matchup. So we'll hopefully those good thoughts and intentions are going to come through, and Winston's going to pick a winner. Next game, Nick, we've got the George Mason Patriots and the University of Richmond. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I got George Mason taking this one. Again, it'll be interesting to see how Winston responds. I don't know if necessarily he looks too much at the mascots there, but I tend to lean towards the Patriot if he does.
I think so. I mean, Winston is a Patriot. And I know that Brenda Brick is an alumni of George Mason, so we hope some good things happen there for her. Now, Nick, we got the Illinois Institute of Art Chicago. You know, it's Scotty Anderson's an alumni there, and the Penn State Nittany Lions. I mean, what are you thinking?
You know, this one, I know Scotty's really been pumping it up. It's that 5-12 matchup that you love to see that upset with.
Right.
That, you know, and Scotty's got a chance here, but I got the Nittany Lions taking this one early. So
yeah, it's hard for me to think that a bunch of cooks are going to beat the Lions.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one. The next game on tap, we got University of South Dakota and the Salukis out of Southern Illinois.
This one should be a good one. We got people on both sides of this one. You know, again, you got the Salukis, so I tend to favor, you know, with Winston on that one. So I picked the Salukis to get out of this one.
You know, a good friend of mine, Dan Brick, went to the University of South Dakota, and I honestly didn't even think they had a basketball team. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup. The next game we got is Mizzou and West Virginia. West Virginia, solid team, Nick.
They are. We saw them a couple times this year. You know, me being a Marquette alumni, we see West Virginia a little bit. But here, I got to go with Julia's Mizzou. I think they're going to pull this one out.
But let's see what the Tigers can do. We'll see what they can do. The next game we got is Quincy University Hawks. That's Paul Deutsch's alma mater, and then the Oregon Ducks.
You know, in Oregon Ducks, I know Megan's looking to pull this one out. If Winston's looking at those mascots, again, I tend to think he might favor that Duck up front.
Well, you know, you kind of hope so, but I'm just worried about those Hawks that they don't come down and kind of pick that Duck up off the ground and take him out in mid-flight. The next, I'm looking forward to this matchup, Nick. We got the Valpo Crusaders and the Colorado State University.
You know, this one is definitely going to be a fun one to watch. It's all about who shows up for these Colorado State, unofficially the Stoners, right?
Well, you know, Nick, legalized marijuana has been, recreational has been legalized for 3 or 4 years out in Colorado. It's pretty easy to get. My guess is they're going to show up as stoned as they always are.
My guess is too. And you saw Valpo earlier this year against
I did. I had a chance to see the Valpo Crusaders out at Valpo Arena. You know, a good friend of mine, Roland Ho's an alumni for there. He talks a lot of smack, so I guess I got to talk some smack back, Roland. You know, we watched that game. They were playing my alma mater, Bradley University, and Roland might have saw that game a different way, but we manhandled them all the way through the game. And, you know, unfortunately, Valpo came tough in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game and got the W, but I would never expect them to be able to beat the Stoners.
Yeah, and it's really all going to be about who shows up. If they've been sitting on the couch for a few days, show up totally stoned, it's going to be Valpo's game to lose.
Well, hopefully those Crusaders got a few prayers that haven't gotten answered yet. Then the final game of the night, we got the Winston University Fighting Red Labs and the Illinois State Redbirds. I know we both got a lot of heart in this game.
Yeah, this one's going to be great. I got Winston taking this one out, but I know Colleen and DeMarco are looking for ISU to put up a big number here. They are a number 2 seed, so they do have a chance here.
Well, you know, Winston is a bird dog, and I don't know if you've ever seen what he does to birds, but it's not pretty.
And you know, the other thing you got to realize is the last game of the night. Last night, Winston was he seemed a little tired. We'll see how his focus is at the end of the game. I think he's going to get up for it and knock these guys out.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the postgame of last night's game. And we had Winston walking off the court at times.
Yeah.
Just exhausted. So now we're going to turn it over to Nick. He's going to talk a little bit more about Winston and kind of what we saw in the games last night. And then we're going to go ahead and break down the East Regional games.
Yeah, and so, again, very interesting what Winston set up for the tone of the East Regional last night. Really debunked that early season or regular season where he was first going always left. Hard left all the time, 60% of the time. Last night, we had a little change of pace here.
You know, I took Winston to an optometrist when I saw that during the preseason, and I thought maybe he was just left eye dominant. I wasn't sure what was going on. We thought about putting a patch on him. But I'll be darned, last night when we watched the games, he was pretty even. He was pretty even left and right. And so, you know, I think we've taken a lot of the the bias out of this tournament.
Yeah, and I think you can go a step further. Last night we saw him go right 5 times and only 3 times to the left. Totally debunked the regular season trend. It'll be interesting to see what he does tonight, but it definitely isn't necessarily a shoe-in for that left-sided hoop.
Yeah, I think we just got to forget about the stats and let the games play.
Let it go. Another surprise, the big surprise I should say for me last night was the Art Institute of Phoenix. I really expected more after all the hype, which Ryan Anderson was touting over and over again about how they're going to show up and play. The game was never really in reach. Winston clearly favored Auburn right out of the gate.
Yeah, it was crazy. You know, we're showing a few of the highlights from last night's games. I apologize. Graphic difficulty. Let me forward through till we get to the video. Hey, sometimes this stuff happens, folks.
Beer break.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fast forward to a couple of these games. You know, this was Nick. Had Winston doing a few tricks for the fans, just so they understand that this is a pretty well-skilled and intelligent dog, and he can do about anything on command.
And he's resting up for the games tonight. He's sitting here at my side. He's been all over the place, but now it's almost game time. He's getting focused, ready to go.
You know, let's go look at that first game from last night. It was Northwestern in Kentucky. What do you think of that one, Nick?
Yeah, and you know, not much of a game here. Northwestern came out early on, set the tone. I thought Winston had a good look at it right out of the gate.
You know, I think his eyes were on the Northwestern Wildcats. I'm an alum, and so I was pretty happy with that W.
Yeah, went right after.
Let's go a little further forward and kind of take a look at, you know, there was a couple of games in here. This was an interesting one. The Lucky Leprechauns and Duke. Nick, you know, what'd you see here?
Yeah, and again, I expected a big game out of Duke here. I mentioned it in the pregame. I was pulling for the Leprechauns. But again, you know, Winston came out, went right towards those Leprechauns. Duke didn't have a chance.
You know, the game that was a real surprise to me, it was a little later in the game. This was Phoenix Art Institute against Auburn.
You know, and again, Ryan was really touting that Art Institute of Phoenix. I thought he had a shot here, but it never really was close.
Well, you know, Ryan set out a steak for me to put on the plate for the Art Institute of Phoenix.
Oh, nice.
And I told him that was, you know, not in the rules. But I did go ahead and place the steak, but apparently it wasn't enough to get him to pick the team.
That probably never made it to his plate. I thought you had it on yours, right?
Well, yeah, I did. I had. It was a filet. It was a nice. Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Nick, we're not going to go there on the next one. This was an interesting one, Nick. I think University of Wisconsin Whitewater, Mary Phillips alma mater playing Providence. Let me tell you what I saw. I was live on the court for this game, and I saw Winston take a hard dash toward the Providence Flyers, you know, from the onset. And then almost in midstream, he offsets and goes left. It was just a really, really interesting look at this game.
Yep, definitely. He did. I totally saw. You
Look
saw
at
it right there. Right to the right and then veers left.
You know, so the dog has a mind of his own. So if anybody thinks there's bias in this tournament, I'm telling you, there's simply not. And then I'll tell you the big upset of the night. This was it. The Iowa-Michigan game, a Big Ten rivalry. We had a lot of fans supporting Iowa with, you know, Kate Anderson and Julia. And
Angie,
boy, and, I'm sorry, Angie Steinle.
And again, you had Michigan on that right side. You figure Iowa was a shoo-in on that left, but again,
Look at this.
He was on the left side starting out and went straight to the right. Hawkeyes never had a chance.
But you can see the fatigue setting in. He kind of took a quick look at the locker room. He was
early
looking for
on,
water, and he said, "Okay, I got to finish my job. I got to finish this offensive threat," and took it to the hoop. And Michigan got the W.
Yeah.
But I think you see now, we're getting late in the games. Winston's getting a little tired, not taking his position at the free throw line. We're loading up the trays for the treats. And, the Hofstra-Villanova game was an interesting one as well,
You see that first tired legs get into play here with Winston.
Right.
He starts to go in. He goes over to you,
He's like, "Coach, take me out, man. I'm
no.
done, man. I need a breather. I need a blow."
We had some Hofstra fans reach out. There was a little fan interference they were going for. But again, four-legged friends, it's what happens. So.
Well, folks, and it's important to know in the tournament, you can't be throwing meat from the stands. You just can't do that.
Right.
You just can't do that. And then let's roll all the way forward. Now, this was, we had a lot of fans from Central Illinois supporting the tournament. Florida Gators up there. The treats got placed. I walk out of the screen. We give Winston the command to go, and I'll be damned. He comes over. He's like, "Coach, I'm going to take a break."
Yeah, he's off the court. He's all the way in the locker room at this point. And that's what happens. Sometimes, again, your four-legged friends that are involved, that's what happens. He comes back out, clearly chooses Florida right out of the gate or out of the back room, and it's them.
Yeah, it was tough for me to watch. I mean, the dog, he's sweating, he's panting, there's drool coming out of his mouth. He's worked hard for the tournament, but we had to give that W to the Gators. That's just for the way that one went.
That's 8 tough games. You figure by that last game of the night, he's going to be a little tired.
Right, and so with that, we're going to tell you a little bit about what's going to go on tomorrow night. We're going to break down the Midwest Regional and then the South Regional pregame to let you know what we see happening before the South region kicks off. So, Nick, any closing words?
No. Looks good. I'm excited for tonight. We'll see how Winston goes.
Go Braves.